Welcome to Let's Get Metaphysical, the show that stretches you beyond your five senses. When you are looking for your next step on the path into the unseen, we've got you covered. Join epic adventure seekers and level up your game with your host, reality magician Allie Bierman.
Greetings, epic adventure seekers. Welcome to your guide to demystifying your world. I'm Allie Bierman, and you're listening to Let's Get Metaphysical, connecting heart and mind. Today's guest is Monica Bermudez. We'll be jumping into some realms even I've not yet experienced. You want to stay tuned in big time to catch it all. But first, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like life just happens to you? If that's you, I made a gift for you. Step in a new direction. In this quick read, you'll begin to discover your power and control every day in your life. The link to download your copy is in the show notes. And now I feel very excited to introduce today's guest, Monica Bermudez. After experiencing a heartbreaking and emotionally painful divorce, Monica started to dig deep within her soul to make transformational shifts in her ancestral and karmic patterns. A miraculous breakthrough allowed her to channel light language, creating a quantum energetic shift for profound emotional and spiritual healing. Monica now uses her energy imbued light language to facilitate healing with many light beings, including dragons, angels, crystals, and ascended masters. As an initiate in ancient mystery schools whose awakened love wisdom from many lifetimes and galactic systems, Monica serves as a heart healing catalyst. I just love that concept, heart healing catalyst. With degrees from mainstream as well as mystic schools, Monica uniquely integrates science, art, philosophy, and mysticism into powerful love wisdom for modern light workers. She shares her gifts as a spiritual counselor and teacher. Monica founded Sacred Heart Awakening. Bottom line, she facilitates the energetic transformation in men and women to step into their own power and support their awakening in the ascension process. Welcome, 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 Monica.
Hello, Ali. I'm so excited and grateful to be here. So honored as well. So thank you for having me on your show.
I'm so excited to talk with you. You're my first guest who was very steeped in science and in philosophy. And you actually were introduced to mysticism when you were a child. I've never known anybody who grew up in all those different worlds. And I'm wondering, did it all just seem normal for you? How did you put it all together?
Well, to me, it seemed normal, and I didn't really see them as being separate. It just, for some reason, growing up, I felt that it was a normal, natural thing. And part of it is because there's an ancient wisdom that's inside of me that's innate. And I do feel that and know that in the ancient times, this was normal to have science and mysticism and all the philosophies combined together. The old structure is separated. People may call it the 3D matrix, and everything seems separate, like science is its own avenue, but it's not the case. And so now, things are starting to open up and be seen that way. It's slowly picking up. Like, for instance, if you see Heart Math Society, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but if you ever read like the About section, you'll find that the people who are in it are scientists, and these are physicists and some really hardcore scientists who have come together to really measure the heart energy and look at it from a very metaphysical and mystical type aspect.
Heart math is really, really powerful. And you listeners out there, if you've never investigated it, I recommend checking it out. I know in my studies, because I learned many modalities from the people who were gifted to create them, I have all these really simple tools for measuring things like how far out your heart goes. And I actually do it with hangers. So when I have live classes, I demonstrate with people. And your heart energy goes out. The farthest that I was able to measure it that day was 30 feet. And that's because the friends whose energy I was measuring, it just backed up and there wasn't any place further to go. And I know scientists have created devices that will measure the heart signal going for 12 feet, but they also believe it goes farther. And the brain energy only goes for 4 feet. So that tells you something right there.
Yeah, so what scientists are now finding in the heart math is that the heart energy has a much stronger imposing electromagnetic strength that could reach out. As far as what they're measuring right now, we just mentioned the 12 feet, is because that their instruments are limited to 12 feet only. But I do feel that it can go even further than the 12 feet. And I think once the scientists figure out other methods and technologies of their measurement, they'll be discovering so many other things that the ancients already knew about.
You probably know the work of Greg Braden, and I watch and read a lot of his books, and he was showing how science has determined there's no such thing as empty space, that they're measuring all this activity in the so-called empty space, which really yields a whole lot of truth, I think, for the whole concept of the mystic world as that being the natural world.
Yes, I mean, that's all of the quantum physics that, the terminology that's used. Yeah. It's really that empty space is not really empty space. The junk DNA is not really junk DNA. They all have their purpose.
So how did you go into the science fields where you had gotten your degree, but then you also were in the mystic? It feels like so much information, and I'm imagining you would have to be able to put it all together in your mind and in your heart for it to make sense to succeed that way.
Well, the way I see it is that mysticism already includes some aspect of science in it, because everything that is talked about is vibration. And as such, in that vibration, there exists frequency. And energy is frequency and vibration. And if you look at Nikola Tesla, he said, there's a quote that he says that I love, is that the universe is of frequency and vibration. And if anybody knows, Nikola Tesla was an engineer. He was one of the people, along with Edison, who was all about electricity, so electrical engineering and so forth. So he was, very technical scientist person, but he was also a mystic. And so a lot of the stuff that I find in mysticism, it already correlates with some of the science, and it already includes some of the philosophy. So it just became a very natural thing for me as a child. I grew up with both worlds in parallel, as mysticism in the back end and scientist, information in the front end that I was studying in college. And so it was just a natural thing for me to combine the two and bring in philosophy. And I found that through time, there have been philosophers who have been mystics, scientists, and as well as, mystics. And Isaac Newton is one of them. People don't really know this about Isaac Newton, that he was not just a scientist. Isaac was all about the physics and, the work and the math. But he was a mystic, he was a scientist, he was a philosopher as well. Look at Pythagoras. Pythagoras was a mathematician. So if you know about Pythagoras, he was all about the triangles and about the math and the triangle. He was a mystic, he was, a scientist and also a philosopher. So a lot of people don't know this about these really famous people. They only see what, came out of production of them was either their math equation or some scientific discovery. And supposedly Einstein himself was a mystic as well. And a lot of the stuff that he got from the E equals MC squared, the physics. So he was kind of like the father of the quantum physics also. And a lot of that he got from a dream. So he was a scientist, a mystic, metaphysics. And these are just some examples of what seems natural to me.
I'm listening to you and I'm realizing the great geniuses of all time, they're different and they don't always explain where their information's coming from, but they're tuning in to what's already there for everybody to grasp. But most of us aren't aware of that. Well, I did, my last podcast was all about how I started having different experiences when I was 3, but I didn't tell anybody about them because I knew they were different. And I knew that other people were not having those awarenesses. Not that other people don't have the experiences, they're just not aware of them.
Yes, that's right. And so when we speak it out loud, it becomes an awareness. And in some ways, it becomes also an activation, because at some level in us, there's a remembrance of this at a deeper soul level. So just hearing it from someone else is also an activating a portion of it, sparking this part of, us to remember that aspect in our soul.
That's really cool. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I know I teach people, if I'm working with them, if you speak, well, for one of a better word, I'll say affirmations. If you write them down, that's one thing. If you read them, that's another thing. But if you speak them out loud, it takes it to a whole different level of working. So What you were just saying, activation, I never thought about that before. That's really powerful.
Yeah, I feel like when we, as a spiritual teacher, in a way, they serve as activators also to help awaken the process of something or spark some remembrance in that soul level.
That's so cool. All these lights are going off inside my mind, and I'm thinking about light workers and the light language. And, if you're in a dark room, just a single match will light up the room. And so a light worker, everything that you just said, awakening people, that's like, wow, I'm just taking it all in.
Yes.
That's really cool. So could you explain for people who are new to this whole way of thinking what a light worker is, what a light language is?
Yeah, so light worker is someone who, like, as we were just talking about, sparks that light, remembrance, and supports others to also help them remember some aspect of them. But there's another aspect to the light worker, and that is to balance both the shadow and the light. It's not just all light or just all shadow either, but it's knowing to be walking the middle path of the two worlds. So being able to also master and support, the balance of the two worlds of the polarity, being the shadow and the light, or, darkness and light. And the duality that we live in right now as humans, right? Mm-hmm. We're being pulled in all different directions. And sometimes the shadow can overpower us. It seems so overwhelming, right, at times. But there is the thing about the light worker is to remember that, we hold the key inside of us to be able to balance ourselves and help neutralize environments as well. So it's about embracing both aspects in us, not just one. It's embracing everything that we are and just continuously be that balance for yourself, first of all, and then for others.
I'm just thinking, if I meet somebody and I just have an initial feeling, I don't like this person, I stop myself and I mentally say to myself, what am I seeing that's in myself that I don't want to recognize that's in this person? Because it's not an accident that person came into my life. So what you were talking about, the dark and recognizing to get the balance.
Yeah, so there's, certain things that trigger us, right? We could just be looking at somebody and we feel triggered in some way. And the trigger can also be, something positive too. It could be something to spark us or inspire us to do something. And a trigger, of course, in most cases could be to get somebody not like that person for whatever particular reason, right? And so, there's always a good chance, to also check inside yourself first to find out what it is that's being reflected or what's coming up for you, something that's being stirred that hasn't been stirred for a while. Mm-hmm. And it could be some underlying subconscious pattern that hasn't been seen before and now is becoming visible. And so just recognizing that and becoming aware and conscious of it is part of the awakening process also. Just having that little spark of awareness and coming from that neutral space rather than being reactionary. right? And it's a point of us holding that balance of neutrality rather than being reactionary. And it's not always easy, right? Because it is human, it's natural for us to become reactionary. When, like if you hit your toe on the door, right? The first instance is you react and you say, ouch, or you may curse at the door or something.
Yeah. How I describe fear is not false evidence appearing real, but it's being triggered, as you were just talking about, by something in the environment. It's out of your awareness because what it's doing is causing you to go back into your past where an event happened that probably the event didn't actually occur, but you were afraid it was going to occur. So because of the trigger, you pull that possibility into the present. And that's, in my definition, that's what creates fear. So it all fits together. So that remembering and awareness is everything. Conscious awareness just changes everything and how you look at your life, and you can take something that looks like pain. Like I had a quote from you, how a heartbreak is a spiritual awakening in disguise.
Yes.
Tell us more about that and your experience.
Yeah, so I have on my website a guide to share, the signs of how a heartbreak is a spiritual awakening. And this was inspired by me when I went through my divorce, that I realized that I went down this deeper path of digging in deep inside my own subconscious level of those patterns and becoming aware of the fact that my relationships in the past were never that great. So that was the first step. So then I had to really dig in and deep into some of the karmic and ancestral patterns and start pulling out those layers. And I started to think, in relationship wise, but what was really happening was that I was going into this deeper spiritual awakening, just being aware of all those patterns. And once I started to tap into my own soul, I sparked and opened up my own channel connection to find that my deeper soul purpose. And all of that, was intertwined with the whole spiritual awakening. So it was an awakening into where I was meant to really be heading, was to be working and focusing more on my soul purpose than anything else. And so it was the end of something else, but the beginning of this next phase in my life, which was the soul agreement contract that I had made to really step up to be this healer that, energy healer that I'm doing right now. That's what I mean by, like, if you go into this really deep heartbreak grief, right? It could be any form of grief of loss, could be a divorce, could be like some kind of romantic relationship that has ended, or, a breakup, or, somebody you lost, or even losing your job or something like that. All of that, creates this like heartbreaking moment in your heart. And it just really feels like your heart is shattered. And so it's just very hard to pick up the pieces and move forward. And so you tend to get into this really deep, dark night of the soul, which is where I ended up. And in that midst of this whole deep, dark night of the soul is when it was opening up the channel for a deeper spiritual awakening. And so that's why I phrased this from, the signs of a heartbreak is a spiritual awakening, is that it's really a wake-up call when we go through some kind of form of loss in our life, some kind of grief, some kind of heartbreak. It's a bit of a wake-up call. It's almost like an alarm clock. And it's like when you've been asleep in some portion of your life, right? And working at a subconscious level, not paying attention to what's really happening with your patterns, then you almost fall into this, the alarm will go off, right? When you're sleeping, right? And then when it goes off, you wake up, right? Then you realize that you were asleep. And so if you turn off, the alarm, and you keep hitting its snooze button, it would just keep getting louder and louder. So the alarm would just keep sounding, right? And so this is like one of those, to me, like the heartbreak into spiritual awakening is like some form of alarm clock when we have gone through some major change in our life like this, having some kind of loss that's big, that will really shake our heart. It will just be like a wake-up call for the heart for this awakening. And, that's where we have to really pay close attention that the signs are there. And it's not the end of the life. It's not the end of you. It's the beginning of something else. And so that's really what I wanted to encourage the listeners, those listening who are going through this form of, heartbreak.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. I'm going to take a quick break for a sponsor. So hold that thought where you are. And we'll be right back, everybody. Just hang in there. Today's show is sponsored by Metaphysical Ministry International, my home base where I get to be the minstrel minister. I created a very special offer for you, my Epic Adventure Seeker. You can get the combo package of the ebook and audio of my popular book, What You Don't Know, You Don't Know, How Your Brain and Mind Keep You Stuck, at a very special price of just $9.97. And that set normally sells for $27. Click the special offer link in the show notes. Coming back to where we were talking about, I understand how you went through all of that. Number, how do you take somebody else out of the pain and into their awakening when they have a breakup?
Well, the first step is that it's best to retreat. And the second one, to retreat and really reflect on all the things that just happened and just be aware and acknowledge that the pain is there. We're not going to deny the pain, first of all, right? It's there for a reason. It's there to teach us. And the second one is definitely surround yourself around positive people, right? Mm-hmm. People who can uplift you and give you the energy support that you need at this time, and just help pick you up in that way. Certainly don't want to be around somebody who is constantly reminding you of the failures, right? You want somebody who has been successful and who can uplift you with some positive reinforcement. And the final one that I highly recommend is definitely being out in nature and just hanging around the trees mostly, because the trees have some special healing ability and scientists have actually done studies on this, since we were talking about the science aspect of things. And they're finding that the aura of the trees are very real. And so when you sit by a tree, when you hug a tree, the aura just mixes with the aura in your body. And the tree can actually help clean up your auric field. And so spending outside, just even hugging a tree and asking the tree to help you through anything, that is happening will definitely shift you energetically really fast.
People who listened to the last episode that I did about how I grew up spending as much time as possible in trees and in the woods, because I just intuitively got that feeling that you just described.
Yeah, and that's what I did. That's what I did mostly when I went through my divorce. I spent my whole time, almost all my time outside in nature, most of it hiking on mountains and spending most of my time around trees. And I made a huge difference, and that led into a much deeper spiritual awakening and getting clearer about my purpose and what I'm doing, which is what I'm doing now. And as a matter of fact, you had asked about light language earlier, but I didn't really answer the question. I talked about the light worker, but then I forgot about the light language. So I want to address it now. And I think it's appropriate because this is, talking about my journey, why I'm here now and doing the energy work that I'm doing. And so light language is really the language of the stars in the solar system, different planets, galaxies and so forth. And each one of those languages, all it is, they're all sound and vibration that gets channeled, and it goes through all the chakra systems in the body. So it's almost like the chakras come together and it produces this light that comes through the throat, this channel. And so it just produces, it's all sound, vibration, and it has some form of frequency as well. It's not a language of Earth in any way, so it doesn't sound like any of the other languages. Although, I feel like from some of my innate inner wisdom, I feel like when the earth was originally in its fifth dimensional eons ago, before the big fall happened and we ended up in the 3D matrix, there, we used to be visited by many star nations and star beings, and they would all come with their own different form of light language from their own star system. And when they would speak it, it would sound, just by sounds and vibrations. And so the natives of the earth, when they would hear certain sounds, it would sound like some form of language or vowel sound. And so I suspect that they picked up or adopted some of that and used it as some form of their own language. And I think that's how some of the languages of earth kind of started, the roots and traces of the different languages on this earth. And so I feel like, for example, like Om, if you know about Om, right? The Sanskrit Om, universal sound.
On my necklace.
Yes. So I feel like that is some form of like light language that was adopted from, some of the star beings that were visiting at the, some like eons ago. And even like with ancient Egypt, you look at some of the hieroglyphs and the way some of the pronunciations, like the word Ka, in Egypt, in the ancient Egyptians, that means body. And I've also used it as a sound vowel. And I, have heard it through some light language speakers, which is a very small percentage right now on this earth of people who have been channeling light language. And I've heard some of them use the word Ka. And so that comes from the different, star nations. So I do firmly believe that some of the languages do have some roots in that. So when I channel it, it's very unique to me. And so I work with my guides in different star beings that come through, for example, like the dragons, and they will share some of their energy codes through the sounds that come through me. And they just work at the cell level, at the DNA level, to switch on certain DNAs that haven't been switched on, that are meant to be switched on, that, and also helps remove any blocks or patterns and, karmic or ancestral. And what the dragons have told me is that the language that I speak that's very unique to me is a very ancient dragon language. So it cuts right through the layers at a very accelerated quantum level, which is why I say I'm an intuitive quantum energy healer. So it's just transmuting things at a quantum level. So like when I went through my divorce, I went down this path of rediscovery inside of me that I had all these abilities. When I really started to work on cleaning up my own karma and ancestral patterns, what ended up was activating this ability in me to be able to channel this light language. And now that I do it, I help others to also break their patterns, at a much deeper and faster rate than it would be for just a regular, like taking for years. Like for me, it was taking years and years, and I wanted something that was something very strong. It's like having strong coffee, right?
Listening to everything that you're saying and all of the religions, and not necessarily religions, but like the Vedic, they have like 500 different chants, and the chants are for healing. And I do Qigong with a Chinese master, and he teaches the Chinese philosophy, and our chants there when I'm doing the Qigong. And think about religious ceremonies, the chants. I can't think of any culture that doesn't have chanting as part of it.
Yes. Yeah. So it's all, some form of sound and frequency and vibration. Yeah. And because the universe is all about sound, frequency, vibration, and it also has its own dancing rhythm as well, musical tones. Yeah. And I don't know if you heard like how some scientists are even studying some of the planets and picking up certain music tones from certain planets.
I have a friend who has a set of tuning forks for each planet.
Yeah, so it's like even like the planets themselves, supposedly they have like their own musical notes that they produce, and it's really fascinating. I think NASA may have been studying on that or something like that. So
yeah, there's so much going on that isn't in the general knowledge stream.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you before we run out of time, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Oh, my website. If they go to www.sacredheartawakenings with an S at the end, .com, and they'll just find all my contact information in there and social media as well.
Okay, and all of this will be in the show notes too. What are people looking for when they find you?
They're looking, you mean like the clients that come to me, like I've been working with?
Yes.
So I would say like it's more of a heart activation, heart awakening process of getting deeper into their patterns and helping them really rebuild and renew their chakra system. So these are the people who have been coming to me, and they really are stepping forward in their life with a much stronger purpose and clarity, much more confidence in their serving their purpose, and also having confidence in their relationships as well around them. So it's bringing much stronger strength in all those aspects of their life.
That's really important. I know I teach how to build your relationship intelligence, and people aren't aware that the relationship history from the time when they're in the womb, and sometimes even before then, it all gets locked into your body and your mind and your spirit. And my work as a kinesiologist, I help get rid of it. And you do it with your energy and your light language in your system. So that's really cool. I thank you for doing what you do and for helping so many people to make a difference. And I just love all that I learned. A whole lot of pieces fell into place just listening to you today. So
thank you so much.
Thanks for being so articulate. Yeah. Is there anything else, any message that you want to be sure to share with people?
No, I just want people to know that it is your nature. It is our nature to be love and to be joy. So you're not meant to be suffering or be in pain anymore. That's the past. And now in this present moment during this ascension, we are meant to be much more. And so that is what I so desire for each and every one of the listeners who are listening for this podcast in this show. And that, just spark this remembrance in them of who they really are already, and who you really are is love and joy.
Thank you. And I definitely share that same belief. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to a talk on the wilder side. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Get Metaphysical. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every Monday for more exciting insights and wisdom on life beyond your five senses. Until next time, take a small step in a new direction. Start now.